जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारे। जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारे। गोपी जन वल्लभा गिरिवर धारे। गोपी जन वल्लभा गिरिवर धारे। यशोदनन्दना व्रजजनरञ्जना। यशोदनन्दना व्रजजनरञ्जना। यशोदनन्दना व्रजजनरञ्जना। यशोदनन्दना व्रजजनरञ्जना। यशोदनन्दना व्रजजनरञ्जना। यशोदनन्दना व्रजजनरञ्जना। यमुनतीरवनचारे। यमुनतीरवनचारे। जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारे। जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारे। गोपी जन वल्लभा गिरिवर धारे। गोपी जन वल्लभा गिरिवर धारे। यशोदनन्दना व्रजजनरञ्जना। यशोदनन्दना व्रजजनरञ्जना। यशोदनन्दना व्रजजनरञ्जना। यशोदानन्दना व्रजजनरञ्जना। यमुनतीरावनचारे। यमुनतीरावनचारे। जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारे। Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram, Hare Hare. Jayo Radha Krishna Chandra, Radhe. Jayo Nitai Gauranga, Jayo Nitai Gauranga. Jayo Prabhupada. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashtotra Shadashi Srimad Divine Grace Abhay Charan Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashtotra Shadashi Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naranchaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam ततो जयमुदीरये नष्टप्रायेष्वभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, 14th chapter, text number 19. Yam ahur atmanoi ardham Shreyas kamasya manini Yasyam svaduram adyasya Pumam charati vijvaraha Yamahuratmanoi ardham Shreyas kamasya manini Yasyam svadhuram adhyasya Pumam charati vijvaraha Yamauratmanoi ardham Shreyas kamasya manini Yasyam svaduram adhyasya Pumam charati vijvaraha Word to word meaning. Yam, the wife who. Ahuhu is said. Atmanaha, of the body. He, thus. Ardham, of. Shreyaha, welfare. Kamasya, of all desires. Manini, O respectful one. Yasyam, in whom. Svadhuram, all responsibilities. Adhyasya, entrusting. Puman, a man. Charati, moves. Vijvaraha, without anxiety. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. O respectful one, a wife is so helpful that she is called the better half of a man's body because of her sharing in all auspicious activities. A man can move without anxiety, entrusting all responsibilities to his wife. Please repeat the translation. O respectful one, a wife is so helpful that she is called the better half of a man's body because of her sharing in all auspicious activities. A man can move without anxiety, entrusting all responsibilities to his wife. Purport. By the Vedic injunction, the wife is accepted as the better half of a man's body because she is supposed to be responsible for discharging half of the duties of the husband. A family man has a responsibility to perform 5 kinds of sacrifices called Panchayagnya, in order to get relief from all kinds of unavoidable sinful reaction incurred in the course of his affairs. When a man becomes qualitatively like the cats and dogs, he forgets his duties in cultivating spiritual values, and thus he accepts his wife as a sense gratificatory agency. When the wife is accepted as a sense gratificatory agency, personal beauty is the main consideration, and as soon as there is a break in personal sense gratification, there is disruption or divorce. But when husband and wife aim at spiritual advancement by mutual cooperation, there is no consideration of personal beauty or the disruption of so called love. In the material world, there is no question of love. Marriage is actually a duty performed in mutual cooperation as directed in the authoritative scriptures for spiritual advancement. Therefore, marriage is essential in order to avoid the life of cats and dogs who are not meant for spiritual enlightenment. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैत गदाधरा शिवासादि गौरभक्तवृंदा हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे यामाहुर आत्मनो हि अर्धम श्रेयस कामस्य मानिनी यस्याम स्वधूरमाद्यस्य पुमां शरति विज्वरः. O respectful one, a wife is so helpful that she is called the better half of a man's body. Because of her sharing in all auspicious activities, a man can move without anxiety, entrusting all responsibilities to his wife. So Kashyapa Muni when requested by his wife to engage in producing children. So Kashyapa is saying that yes, I should actually satisfy you because after all you are my wife. And the duty of a husband means what? The duty of a husband means he has to satisfy his wife because his wife does so many things for him. So, in this material world, we can see in this case, though, the wife is seeking from husband, whereas for a man, even if the woman doesn't want, the man is very willingly to go behind a woman. So just imagine the case scenario when the woman is after the man, then what will be the situation of the man? Right? And it is but natural. That's why they compare women to be fire and man to be butter. So if you bring the butter near the fire, what will happen? It will melt. That is natural, right? Nobody can control. If you want the butter to be in the shape of the butter, then what should you do? You should keep it far from the fire. But if you keep it near the fire, it is going to attain a liquid state. From solid state, it is going to become liquid. That's a natural course of action. Yes, when as a living entity, as a jiva, as a spirit soul, there's no difference between man, woman, nothing. Everybody are equal. As far as the Atma is concerned, Atma doesn't have any particular sex or denomination. Atma has only one identity, that it is an Amsha of the Lord, and its constitutional position is to be a servant of the Lord. That is Atma's nature. But when the Atma is embodied in this material world, then Atma, then that embodied body takes on various identities. And those identities, when it gets material identities, then material identities, its actions and reactions are a natural consequence. Just like if you take sodium, and you put sodium into water, what will happen? Big blast will happen. Because it reacts with water. Right? So that's a natural. Sodium by itself is harmless. But sodium, when it touches water, then it becomes a different game altogether. So similarly, living entity in its constitutional position is perfect. But living entity in its embodied state, it is a little complicated, how it behaves, how it acts. So, generally, people misunderstand the conception of sameness. People say, sab saman hai, sab equal hai. Yes, sab saman hai in its original state. Right? As human beings, we are all one, no doubt about it. Right? But if that human being his state of consciousness is contaminated. Supposing we are all sitting here together. Supposing there's a hardcore criminal who is sitting along with us. His intention is to kill, his intention is to rob. But when he sits here, we cannot identify. He will be one among us only. Because he is one human, he is same. Our bodies are same, he looks like us, he looks like one of us, he is sitting in the class. But then, if he is having a gun or a knife inside, suddenly he takes out the gun and he shoots. And we think, my God, why did he do that? Because his actions are controlled by his state of consciousness. So that is why when we are going to board an aircraft, they are going to check you heavily. You will go and tell the CIS of security there on the gate, all are human beings. Why are you doing like this? I am also like this. Don't check. What is all this? We are all saman. The CSF will take you easily or what? You're a get lost man. Because if you are in 32,000 feet, even a small blade is sufficient. Right? You can jeopardize 200 people's lives in that aircraft. Right? So risky. So it will be so careful. Nobody protests. Everybody is careful because, my God, who is having what, God knows. What their intention is, God knows. We have no idea. So, we have to apply the principles appropriately. Like Kashyapa is saying here that, O respectful one, a wife is so helpful that she is called the better half of man's body. Because of her sharing in all auspicious activities, a man can move without anxiety, entrusting all responsibilities to his wife. See, he's saying, wife is so nice, wife is so important, wife takes care of so many things, and if she is responsible, so nice. And the reason that Kashyapa is giving all these things is what? Because Diti is asking Kashyapa that please let us produce children. And what is the time of that request? It's a very Sandhya Kala. Diti is asking this kind of a request, which ideally Kashyapa should immediately reject and not indulge in this kind of things. But on Diti's persistence, Kashyapa says, okay, fine, you are my wife. After all, husband's duty is to satisfy the wife. He should provide all these things. How can Kashyapa speak like this? He cannot speak like that, no? Yes, in ideal situation, all these things are okay. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna himself says, Dharma viruddho kamosmi bharatarshabha. That kama, sex life, is I am sex life which is not against the dharma. Krishna says, Kandarpa kamosmi bharatarshabha. Because Krishna is saying that I am sex life. That means for progeny, Krishna has created this action. But there is a way to engage in this action. Not like cats and dogs. Cats and dogs have no control. They are completely under the influence of their body and senses. As soon as their senses demand, they immediately want to gratify that senses. That is a animalistic nature. But human beings are not, should not be driven by instinct alone. Human behavior has to be cultured, toned down according to the dharmic principles. That is the essence of being a human being. We cannot allow ourselves to be victims of our mind, body, and senses. We must train our mind, body, and senses to act in line with the principles of Dharma. That is the essence of being a human. The essence of being a human is, yes, body demands something, senses demand something, mind demands something. But being born as a human being, I will not allow my body, mind, and senses to act, to be driven by that. That's why Prabhupada always stressed on that how from the very beginning of our human life, brahmacharyena, yama, niyamena, we must practice proper discipline in our life. And that should start very early in our life. Very early in our life. Otherwise, senses are extremely difficult to control and manage. Kaumaram acharet pragno dharman bhagavataniya. Like Prahlad Maharaj says, from the very early stage of our life, from the time when we learn to walk or speak, we should be taught how to manage and control our urges, senses. Our Goswamis, our Acharyas, they led by example. Otherwise, we will do actions which are contrary to the principles of Vedic life. And the consequences of such actions are too big. So at least in Kali Yuga, all of us, none of us have been trained to control our senses. There is no desire at all, neither understanding of the need for control of senses at all in this age and time. You can see in every house, every family, father is also a sense gratifier, and he allows his children also to gratify their senses unlimitedly. All society, everywhere, it's only talks about which hotel has come up newly, where to eat, boga, all kinds of nonsensical foods, which cinema to go, which hotel to stay, how to enjoy, how to gratify our senses. That is the only purpose in a materialistic society. Over everybody, how to earn more money. With that more money, what will I do? I will buy better cars, better house, better facilities for myself, and I will enjoy how to enjoy the senses more and more. This is the only purpose. Whereas our scriptures, the examples that they show is forget it. There is no question of gratification of senses. One must lead a life of just basic sustenance, that's all. Because we are entrapped in this material body, just the basic means to sustain this body to go on. That much only should be our, only that much is our allowance with respect to bodily attachment. Beyond that, if we start, then we start getting entangled in more and more and more and more ways. You can see, as the description of this story of Diti and Kashyapa goes on, you can see what a big entanglement they have got into. The indulgence of living entity in gratifying the senses and trying to find reasons for that is the cause of all problems in the material world. It's the main cause. The more we can restrain our senses, the more peaceful society will become. But what to do? We are living in a consumerist society. Right? Everybody, they constantly promote a consume. Like every industry, every factory, every business, every government, what are they saying? What is the consumption level? How much we have consumed? Our per capita income, how much it has grown? Right? Economy, how much it has grown? Oh, sales of cars have reduced. Sales of bikes have reduced. Then immediately they say, oh, the country is going in deceleration. It is not accelerating, it is decelerating. Whereas from the Vedic perspective, more the needs and material needs and necessity reduces, that much more is the more favorable for spiritual practice. And this is voluntarily trying to give up material needs and necessities, not by kala. Like for example, sometimes because of sinful activities, people become very poor. They don't even get material necessities. That is the reverse way. In some places you can see they are very, very poor because they have done so much sinful activities that even material world does not give them that basic necessities. That's even more worst. Jai Shri Radha Krishna Chandra Shri Nitai Gauranga Krishna Prabhupada. Whereas what we are talking about is voluntarily trying to reduce our needs and necessities. Just like Ekadashi, today is Ekadashi. We are trying to reduce our dependence on many things. Prabhupada used to say, Ekadashi means you should reduce your eating, you should reduce your sleeping, you should increase your chanting, you should increase your devotional service, you should increase your reading. See, we are reducing our bodily needs and necessities and increasing our spiritual activities. That is the essence of Ekadashi. So, when we are saying that you reduce consumption, we are saying yes, reduce bodily needs of consumption and increase spiritual activities. That is the essence. So, ideally, when Diti is coming up with this kind of a proposal to Kashyapa, what Kashyapa could have done is that he could have guided Diti in some spiritual instruction so that she is able to overcome our material weakness. Yes, when somebody becomes overwhelmed with material desire, and especially this kind of a sexual desire, it is uncontrollable. It has to be satisfied. So in that sense, Kashyapa is also is left with no other option other than, he in fact says that also, I leave it to my vidhi, I leave it to my fate. Whatever happens, happens. But then it is very easy to say whatever happens will happen. After that, what happens will be very, 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 very painful. Just like when Diti knows that her two sons are going to be great demons, very big demons, and they will be killed by Lord Vishnu himself. Diti is under tremendous sorrow. She suffers greatly for when she gets that news. Yes, in this material world, if anybody who thinks that this body is everything, enjoyment, he will end up with death, that's all. He will go to lower species of life. So, we have to take the right learning. This example of Diti and Kashyapa is given in the Srimad Bhagavatam so that Bhagavatam is instructing us not to make the same mistakes what Diti and Kashyapa is making. We must learn how, like for example, when Brahma created, in the previous chapters we read how when Brahma created, the four Kumaras were the sons of Brahma. So Brahma he started in the process of Brahma's creation, he wanted to populate this world, right? He wanted to increase the population. So he created the four Kumaras, and he told the four Kumaras, the four sons of Brahma, he told them to get married and produce children and increase the population. The four Kumaras said, get lost, we are not interested. We want to remain brahmacharis. And they remained as small children. Because small children are not affected by sex desire, right? And small children, how does it matter? When somebody who's only 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, if they see a girl or if they see anything, they are not going to be bothered by all those things. That is the innocent nature of small children, right? So that's why the Kumaras remained as small children throughout. They were so innocent. Although they were the oldest citizens, when they went to the Lord Vishnu's Dwara, they were just like small child. In the painting, you can see the four Kumaras, how they are very small. They are so innocent. In fact, when Shukadev Goswami, when he was born, and as soon as he was born, he left, in the first canto we have read how Shukadev Goswami left his home. And Shukadev Goswami was completely naked. He was an Avaduta, he was completely naked. And then in that naked body, he started walking. And when he was walking, he passed by a lake. And when he passed by a lake, women were taking bath there. And he was a grown-up man. At that time, he was a very grown-up man, Shukadev Goswami. So he was walking by a lake and women were taking bath there in that lake. So at that time, the women who were taking bath, they didn't even bother to cover their bodies, or they didn't even feel any embarrassment when Shukadev Goswami passed by them. Because Shukadev Goswami, in his demeanor, in his external behavior, he was so innocent that they didn't feel any lust, any kind of sense gratificatory behavior in him, that they felt that we need to close. Just like a dog is passing by. How does it matter? An animal is passing by. It doesn't matter whether you are naked or whatever it is. So Shukadev Goswami's behavior was like that. But at the same time, when Shukadev Goswami was walking, because he left the home, as soon as he was born, he said, I want to pursue spiritual life. I don't want to stay in the same house and enjoy material life with mother, father and all those kind of things. I want to just pursue spiritual life. I am going. So at that time, Vyasadeva pursues Shukadev Goswami. Well, Vyasadeva is the father of Shukadev Goswami. So Vyasadeva is running, my dear son, please come back. You are just born. I want to take care of you. Come, come. So Vyasadeva is running behind Shukadev Goswami, and then Vyasadeva reaches near that lake. And as soon as Vyasadeva comes, then the ladies who are taking bath, they immediately rush to take their clothes and cover their body. You see the difference? Vyasadeva is the compiler of all the Vedas, of all the Vedic literatures, who knows the ultimate truth. But yet, when Shukadev Goswami passed by, no ladies bothered to even cover their bodies. But when their father, Vyasadeva, was reaching Shukadev Goswami and he neared their spot where they were taking bath, they immediately ran to cover their body. Because compared to Shukadev Goswami, Vyasadeva had some, he was still, his senses were not as liberated as what Shukadev Goswami's was. So yes, ideally, yes, a wife is if that wife is very, very spiritually motivated, then wife is a great support for the husband. It's a great support for the husband if that wife is spiritually interested. Because many, like Prabhupada is giving in the, mentioning in the purport, that a wife, a husband can divide many of his responsibilities with his wife. And the wife, an able wife, can handle all those kind of responsibilities. Because in a relationship between a man and a wife, so much of trust is built into that. And to hand over responsibilities, lot of trust is required. Faith is required. So, in an institution of marriage, faith and trust is automatically inbuilt into that institution. And that being the case, if in an ideal situation where the wife is very much spiritually motivated, then it is a very, very positive relationship. Lot of duties can be shared. So in that sharing, yes, here like for example, here it is mentioned, Yam ahahur atmanohi ardham. Yes, in that sense you are ardham. Like we say, ardha means half. Say, man and a wife is like each other's life is half in each other, in both of them. It is divided. So in that sense, yes. But then in today's Kali Yuga, Prabhupada himself is mentioning here that, in the material world, it's only lust is the principle. Nobody is interested in sharing or dividing responsibilities and all. The only purpose of marriage is how both of them can engage in mutual sense gratification. That is the only purpose. So when that becomes the objective of marriage, sense gratification is such that senses are so, our senses are like prostitutes. A prostitute is never satisfied with one man. She wants many men. So if senses becomes the objective, senses will like the wife one day. After one day, the senses will tell, hey, I'm so bored with you, I need one more or something else. Just keeps on changing. The nature of sensual happiness is it wants different things every time. Like we want different food every day. We want different varieties, so many things. So anything which becomes controlled by Indriya, it is very dangerous because uh, as soon as Indriya pleasure takes over, then you can understand that these things will be very temporary. It will not last. That's why Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that uh, uh, pleasure derived from the senses are never permanent, and there is no what is that? Uh, what is that shloka? यही संपर्शा भोगा दुख यो न यहाँ एवते आद्यंतवंतः नतेषु रमते बुधः. What is that verse now? Which chapter is that? 5.22. An intelligent person does not take part in the sources of miseries which are due to contact with the material senses. O son of Kunti, such pleasures have a beginning and an end, and so the wise man does not delight in them. Which is that shloka? One more shloka is there. That something which has nasate vidyato bhavo, nabhavo vidyate sataha. No? What is that? Which chapter is that? Nasate vidyato bhavo, nabhavo vidyate sataha. That is which chapter? 2.16, is it? See here. See, this is what I wanted to actually say. This is very most, always we can meditate on this. That you see, Nasate vidyate bhavo, nabhavo vidyate sataha, ubayorapi drishtontas tvanayos tattvadarshibhihi. Those who are seers of the truth have concluded that of the non-existent there is no endurance, and of the existent there is no cessation. This seers have concluded by studying the nature of both. Right? So you see, this is a very powerful verse, basically because here Krishna is giving the nature of body and spirit. What is the nature of body? What is the nature of spirit? So anything connected to the body and the body, mind and senses, its endurance is very low. It doesn't last. Pleasure derived or anything derived from bodily things, that pleasure doesn't last at all. Whereas pleasure derived from the Atma, it never ends. Prabhupada is saying here in this purport, there is no endurance of the changing body. That the body is changing every moment by actions and reactions of the different cell is admitted by modern medical science, and thus growth and old age are taking place in the body. But the spirit soul exists permanently, remaining the same despite all changes of the body and mind. That is the difference between matter and spirit. By nature, the body is ever changing, the soul is eternal. This conclusion is established by all classes of seers of the truth, both impersonalist and personalist. In the Vishnu Purana, it is stated that Vishnu and his abodes have all have self-illuminated spiritual existence. Jyotim Shi Vishnur Bhavanani Vishnu. The words existence, existent and non-existent refer only to spirit and matter. See? The words existent and non-existent refers only to spirit and matter. That is the version of all seers of truth. This is the beginning of the instruction by the Lord to the living entities who are bewildered by the influence of ignorance. Removal of ignorance involves the re-establishment of the eternal relationship between the worshipper and the worshipable, and the consequent understanding of the difference between the part and parcel living entities and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One can understand the nature of the Supreme by thorough study of oneself. The difference between oneself and the Supreme Being understood as the relationship between the part and the whole. In the Vedanta Sutras as well as in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Supreme has been accepted as the origin of all emanation. Such emanations are experienced by superior and inferior natural sequences. The living entities belong to the superior nature as it will be revealed in the 7th chapter. Although there is no difference between the energy and the energetic is accepted as the supreme and an energy or nature is accepted as subordinate. The living entities therefore are always subordinate to the Supreme Lord, as in the case of master and servant or the teacher and the taught. Such clear knowledge is impossible to understand under the spell of ignorance, and to drive away such ignorance, the Lord teaches the Bhagavad Gita for the enlightenment of all living entities for all time. Na sate vidyate bhavo na bhavo vidyate sata. Ubayorapi drishtontas tvanayos tattvadarshibhi. Tattvadarshibhi, one who is understood the complete truth. He knows. What to pursue and what not to pursue. So, from just moralistic principles, if you just speak the duty of a wife, the duty of a husband, all these kind of things, without understanding our position, then it will lose all its importance and credibility. This so-called wife and husband roles and all those things, it will be credible only if you are living on that platform. Otherwise, no credibility will be there. Just like, for example, Prabhupada used to always stress, you can talk big things like that. But if you are internally not practicing it, then what you talk has no value at all. So Kashyapa and Diti is wanting this one, and for that requesting and then telling about the duties, and then for that Kashyapa is saying, Diti is asking for that, and then Kashyapa on that pretext is saying, oh, this is your role, your wife, or the wife is Ardhanari, you are doing those so many things. Where is the credibility? Prabhupada used to say, this is just like thieves telling each other that let us do it, distribute the stolen wealth very dharmically. How is it possible? You have stolen somebody's property and then you are saying very righteously, let's distribute it among ourselves. No. If you have to distribute righteously, then you should have earned it righteously. You have not earned it righteously. On stolen property, that's why Prabhupada used to always say, devil recites scriptures, you should be very careful. Sarpo chishta payodata. Many people talk about Krishna, many people speak about so many things like this, about scriptures, about Dharma Shastra, so many people speak without following any of the dharmic principles. Mayavadi is like that. Always in our parampara, it is always stressed, first achar, fir prachar. We must follow and then preach. Otherwise, it will have no potency at all. We'll stop here if there's any question, comments. ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की, श्रील प्रभुपाद की.